Good morning, everyone, and welcome to join us for the discussion today. I'm the host, and I'm joined with 7 others. My name is Mark Davies. I'm the Principal Director at TP Bennett, and today I'm joined by Claudia Bastiani from Mastercard, Alan Bainbridge, BBC, Suzan Dixon, Standard Charter, Markus Huber, Salesforce, Jessica Rentzos, GSK, Jess Schumacher, Microsoft, and Michael Whitney from Accenture. So looking forward to today's discussion. And today's topic is future-proofing offices. We've only got an hour, so there's a lot to get through. Any questions, please put them into the chat function, and we can try and answer those as we move through the next hour. I think it's an underestimate to say that the line between workplace and home has been blurred over the last 14 months. The hesitancy of some organisations to embrace home working has now been eroded now that most of us are working from home. This has given us a unique set of challenges and opportunities for occupiers and for their employees. And one of those chiefly is experience curation. We're going to start off with that opening question is how are occupiers creating experience for their employees? And I think I'll probably throw that question first at Jeff, if that's okay, maybe just to kick off with that, and as we start moving through the discussion.
Yeah, so happy, thanks, Mark. I think about, as you think about experience, as we think about experience, there's what we would say would be the traditional experience for us, which would be the what happens when somebody comes into the office. What amenities or what are we providing to them to make their experience exceptional? I think today there's lots of things that are going to change. We'll probably talk a bit today about equity. How do you create the balance between the home office person and the person who's working in the office? In the past, maybe there wasn't as much equity as there is today, where we're all, equal sized boxes on a screen. And then you think about just the idea of then people wanting to be safe in that experience. So there's a lot of things I think out there that are going to drive change. I don't think we know what they all are yet. And I think at Microsoft, we're going to use data to really drive kind of our understanding of how our teams and our customers, partners, and all the people who utilize our facilities are going to react to what is the new. So yeah, it'll be an interesting time, that's for sure, over the next, say, 3 to 6, 9 months, 12, 18, 36, and beyond.
And Jeff, you're saying you're using data. How are you collecting that? How are you reacting? I suppose with this pandemic now, and with the last 14 months and going forward, things are very fluid. Things are changing. It's going to be very difficult to predict circumstances. And how does data help you with that?
I think you can baseline with what was prior, and then I think there's all kinds of technologies that we'll utilize in terms of, maybe it's pulse surveys, like quick splash type stuff that, it's a amenity usage surveys, or it could be even, people counting, full building people counting, and things of that nature, where we're really looking at, okay, we've created this experience. We think that people are going to want to come in to be more collaborative. Is that actually the case? Are they spaces that are collaborative? One, do they work, and are people utilizing them? And if they're not, let's try and determine why. And so we'll use a bit of time to let people vote with their feet, and really demonstrate to us, what is working and what isn't, and where they're going and what they're doing. I think the other part of this for us is and I personally firmly believe that, a lot of this has to do with culture and people really wanting to get back into, a semblance of team and community. And for us, real estate delivers a lot on that. That's how we design our spaces. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. Markus, a question for you. Obviously, you operate over a number of regions. Jeff talked about community, and what are the challenges you're finding with creating that community for your organisation, Salesforce, with people working from Australia or North America, Europe? What challenges are you guys finding?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And as you probably know, community, bringing people together, doing customer events is actually what made Salesforce successful. So I think probably the success depends equal on the product, but also on the sales and marketing and the events and the community and the culture. So obviously, this topic is really top of mind for Salesforce, and what does that change mean for us? And I think it's a little bit twofold. On the one hand, and this is clearly related to our products as well, right? We're encouraging people and customers with tools to work from home, right? And not just with Zoom, but obviously there's Slack, there are different things. Obviously, Microsoft has a fantastic tool as well. However, I think back to your question, we completely understand that this is still a human business, and to retain the culture, to retain the human connection, to make projects successful and productive, we are very certain we need to bring people back to the office. The biggest challenge, I think, is in this phase now of the pandemic, where slowly we're going to open up. So obviously Europe is behind. Thankfully, the UK is doing good. In EMEA, Israel is obviously doing good, but the rest is a little bit behind. But we're slowly bringing people back. But here's the problem. I'm not quite sure that we could already make clear to our people when they return to the office that this is going to be a different experience and not necessarily a better experience, just driven through all the health and safety measures, through all the controls that we're putting in place. So this is the biggest challenge for us. How do we make it a really good experience? As when people are coming back, probably they're not sitting in the same teams together. They're not meeting other people again, right? They cannot all sit in a meeting room. With tools, maybe they get forced to leave the office at a specific time. They need to use booking tools. So it's going to be rather more difficult. And I think that's really the big question for us. How do we make it still attractive for people to go into the office? However, the clear statement is we want them to come back. We don't want to force them. That's not the idea. We're pretty sure we need to make that voluntarily, but we want to bring them back. We want to give them a home to exactly retain our very strong culture.
Thanks, Markus. Jessica, again, what are your challenges, I suppose, over the last 12 months and going forward?
Yeah, I think that they're very similar to Markus, really. I think it's the understanding of how to sort of create that right experience when people come back, but also just the environment will be different. The purpose of why people come to the office will be different. And I think the sort of how do you marry these two up together with the uncertainty, because I think that's where people were asking a lot of questions, but what Jeff said, saying doing a lot of data gathering, but people are still very uncertain of how they see themselves working in the future. They might have a view of when in the beginning of the pandemic, everyone said, oh, we love working from home. Hopefully 14 months down the line, people saying, actually, we're quite happy to come back to the office. So I think that is constantly an evolving experience of a event as well. So from us, the biggest challenge is to keep track of that and be agile enough to work with the changing demands for people and what their expectation is when they do come to the office. Because I think, yeah, it's also understanding and how we can bring the right groups together. Because I think the other element is getting the teams together, but if part of the team wants to work from home and the others would like to go to the office or combine them, how do you make sure that it's the right days that they're arriving, but even if they do choose between different environments to work, how to retain equal presence in meetings or in collaborative events. So I think that's where we'll find the big challenges.
Has the technology evolved? And I suppose people are using more of the tech now as that they're working from home. Have you seen any changes over the last 12 months with your technology and the way you use it and the technology that you're thinking of implementing over the next 12 months?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I think Jeff or Markus touched on it. Is obviously, I think going forward and even sort of the discussion we had, I think everyone will probably move more towards desk booking. So I think that sort of you have to have a technology system to sort of work on that. But I think the other bit is really of trying to for us then to do the data collection. Ensuring that we've got the right spaces and sufficient spaces available is we'll start to have to use AI to sort of work out how we can balance the groups and what people can use and book certain times. Other teams can book other times. So yeah, I think there will be a lot more technology in the background. I think the key is to sort of make it as frictionless and easy for people to use so it doesn't become a barrier to go back into the office. But definitely more technology will be used to monitor what spaces are used, how spaces are being used, and what is the demand.
Thanks, Jessica. Question for you, Claudia. Again, I suppose trying to curate that experience for your staff. Have you seen any changes over the last 12 months with how people are using technology, how technology is helping to bring your people together and to create that community? And maybe even another question is, as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic, thoughts about coming back to the office and challenges.
Yeah. So I think we're all sort of saying similar things here. I think the biggest challenge for us all is understanding how people are going to behave. So we can only predict that now. So I think some of the tools that we use now around utilization, we will just look at that information and that data a little bit more carefully now in the context of post-pandemic, how are people going to behave? So I think the first thing for all of us is to understand generally what the pattern of utilization is across the whole portfolio, because of course, like you've said, Markus, the UK are sort of ahead of the game at the moment, as is Israel. We've got other countries to catch up. So, for our global organizations, it's not at the moment a one plan fits all. So I think there's that. So all of us will be analyzing our utilization data better. And then to progress a little bit on from that, when our teams are in the office, what settings are they truly using? So we all assume everyone's going to come in to not necessarily focus work. We're assuming they're going to come in to collaborate and innovate, and that would make sense. But is that really going to happen? And if that does happen, are our settings fit for purpose now? So I think for the next 6 to 18 months, we're just going to have to watch, gather data, and try to predict and make informed decisions in that way. But in parallel to that, of course, we can be doing now. So if I just take, we have a project in Dublin at the moment. So we're building a tech hub, which is part of our strategic growth in Ireland. And so it's a fabulous standalone building, but of course this should have been finished in June this year, and it keeps getting pushed because of the pandemic. We've just come out of a lockdown in Ireland, as most of you are probably aware. So what can we do now to tweak our design in response to the pandemic? So we are doing some simple things like looking at our one of our settings, say our telephone rooms, whether they're single or double use telephone rooms. We're upgrading the experience in that room so that there's more of an immersive feel to that meeting. So there'll be, instead of in the old days, perhaps you'd walk in with your laptop and, you know, take a phone call. Now we're going to have a better screen, better lighting. The acoustics are already pretty good, etc. Just to sort of like upgrade that experience. And then taking that, looking at our executive meeting rooms. Now, of course, we're probably never going to go back to everyone being in the room at the same time. So our AV has to be tweaked as well, because we need to have an equitable experience for people in the room and out of the room. So we are making those changes now, but we certainly don't have all the answers at this point. I don't think anyone has. I think all we can do is mobilize and keep responding as we go. And I think it's really important, forums like this, for everyone to share their stories, because this is how we really learn, because otherwise you can be very inward facing as an organization. So I think it's really good to talk and learn from other people in that respect. So I think, you know, for us real estate people, I think we all need to get a bit clued up and just keep talking to each other and use our current technology tools and look at exploring how we can make those tools perhaps a bit more advanced to give us the real information that we need now.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. It's interesting you're talking about the equitable experience. Michael, what kind of challenges have you faced with trying to create an equitable experience for your people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a global consulting firm, we have, we're operating in 68 countries. So getting everybody back is going to be a different story in each country, for the reasons that have been mentioned earlier. And what we are obviously focused on right now is getting people back safely, and frankly, as soon as we can, because people are really keen to come back into the office. But what it's going to be about in the future is about the experience and what that is all about. As Markus said earlier, the experience initially may not be that great. It may be, a lot driven by the health and safety protocols that we need to employ. But for looking into the future, it is about the experience. And instead of us, as we might have done in the past, counting people in and who's using the office, we now need to understand why are they coming in and what that experience is like. I think everybody is talking about the hybrid model where people might come into the office 2 or 3 days a week, and or maybe even less. And therefore, in order to ensure that we have equitable participation, we need to invest in our technologies going forward. And I agree that's going to be somewhat of an iterative process as we go. And we've seen incredible leaps in technology, in collaboration. And today we're all on the same platform, so we're all equal in terms of our participation. But in the future, it's not going to be like that. And therefore, we need to encourage people to engage and participate across multiple platforms, but to have that seamless experience. And that's going to be important for our talent strategy, because we think that people will seek to, to move out of cities, maybe have a different lifestyle, leverage in their own personal life more remote working than perhaps was possible before. And indeed, I was on a call earlier where we spoke about one of our key things at Accenture, because we engaged in hoteling in the mid-90s. So we have a lot of experience of how to have everything cloud-based, how to have proper protocols around doing that. So that's been great. But it was one of our value propositions for people joining us, where we said that we could allow people to work from home. But now everybody's allowing people to work from home. So we really need to think about our value proposition in that regard. But what will be central is the technology. I think there's the technology of collaboration, and then there's the technology within the space itself to make that space much more usable, to create that intelligent workspace, to ensure that when people come into the office, because they're not coming in every day now, they're coming in less frequently, how can we make that intuitive? How can we have that frictionless engagement in being able to walk in? What can we put on your watch, for example, to ensure that you don't need to have badges and things like that in future, that you can pass through, that you can easily connect, you can move seamlessly from one room to another. These are all the things that we are looking at. So we do believe that technology will have a major part to play in improving that employee experience.
I suppose part of the challenge as well is knowledge sharing, and with this pandemic, a lot of us being away from the office, there's the challenge of knowledge sharing to our younger employees. Suzan, is that something that is an issue for Standard Charter? How are you addressing that?
Yes, I think, Mark, I'm sure it's the same issue everybody's going to be facing. The challenge being, especially with new starters, how do we enable them and give them that same experience? And I think the new starters, or in fact the younger generation, the challenge they have is they have smaller places that they work from, parents' home, all that kind of stuff. So they don't have the luxury of having their own offices at home. So we expect that they'll be coming, we don't expect, but we anticipate that they'll be wanting to come back to the office. But even through the process, we would still like that consistent approach. And I think we are looking at inductions, the basic stuff, but inductions, how do we do that? How do we ensure that they have that experience, that it's a good experience before they even come into the door? So I think we are looking at all those, and again, technology will play a big part of it. With it, we are encouraging. We have signed up for hybrid working for our employees globally, and as part of that, it's how do we have that seamless experience? So we've done things like we've looked at our standards, our workplace standards, and we've reviewed it to really hit that twice the experience commitment that we have for our employees. But as part of that, again, we are looking at how we operationalize. So pretty much all the folks on this call have spoken about those things, that how do we make that connection and a consistent approach, a seamless approach, where everybody feels part of the tribe, versus you feeling like you're left out. So it's a lot of work in progress, but technology definitely will play a key part. So what we've also done is ensure our PropTech standards, which basically, like workplace standards, we have a PropTech standards, they are aligned. So whatever they are doing, even when we are upgrading meeting rooms, what we've done is we've ensured that it's as per the PropTech standards and it's for the future. So things like Teams, as an example. We are ensuring that our meeting rooms also have Teams and is upgraded to that level, so that's the part of the future-proofing the office. But all work in progress, again, assessing what's coming our way, and we are really planning for that.
Are you using, how many communication platforms are you using? Are you just only using Teams, or do you have a number of other?
Much of variety. That's why with Zoom, it's like, oh my God, Zoom, what else? And I don't, at a bank, we've decided not to use Zoom as an example, but we use things like Blue Jeans, obviously Teams now coming in, and there's a variety. Let's just put it like that. There's a real variety that we are using. We use Skype for Business too. So there's quite a lot of variety. We are still catching up, and that's where we are saying what's the future and really tagging ourselves to that future piece.
Yeah, because that's a challenge, isn't it? If you're going to have to go and make a call, or for instance here, and then you suddenly don't have Zoom downloaded, then you're panicking, and then you're calling your IT guy in and getting it set up. And I think it's going forward is trying to create a seamless experience, how you can respond to these sort of things. Yeah. One thing I was going to ask you, Suzan, is you've obviously talent retention, attracting new talent into Standard Charter. What has the last 12 months given you in terms of bringing these talent pools into the workplace? How are you? What's the nuances that you've seen over the last 14 months, I beg your pardon, with bringing in young talent into the workplace, into your organisation?
Yeah, I think our HR drive is, again, pretty much, I guess, similar. Global organization, wanting the best talent, again, promoting what we are doing in terms of, ensuring our workplace is really set up for this future talent. But I think, I guess the challenge is that younger generation, what is their feeling? And again, it's different for different locations. I think in Europe and Americas, they're more seasoned for hybrid working. But you won't have that experience in the likes of China or Hong Kong or India, where there is this, where management would like to see their staff. But at the same time, the whole bit where the new talent, they'd like to be in too. But so it's a bit of a different approach for our different locations. But what we are trying to do, and this is a partnership with the HR and technology, to ensure that even that induction or whatever platforms they're rolling out, they have a good understanding right from the get-go. So they're not coming in like, what do we do? So we have this buddy system, but basically ensuring people feel part of a group versus just feeling left out. And right now, with everything that's happening, I think it's even more so than before.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. You've got a buddy system. I've heard of that system before, and that's proving successful, is it, for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff, I guess we are all trying to figure out what works out best, right? So it's, again, work in progress. We've not seen some locations are already 100% in, like China, for example, or Hong Kong. But UK, it's, again, they are all working from home. We do have a lot of engagement sessions. We try to keep it interesting. So we have engagement so people do feel connected. So social engagement, not necessarily just work related. So we are trying to keep that engagement with employees kind of going. So even within property, we'll have engagement sessions on cooking or exercise classes, those kind of things. So you just try to keep the collaboration going on a personal level, not just professional.
And that's been very successful for you. Yeah,
it's going well.
I'd like to add something to that, actually, Mark. Again, Susan, I agree with everything you're saying. I think one of the things we need to think about is, so let's just assume in the future we have equitable, home and or remote and office working, and our offices now have all the correct settings so that when we collaborate, we're collaborating and innovating, etc., etc. So we're in that world now. But what else are, we know that attracting and retaining talent, the workplace has a part to play in that. So what else can we think about now, and what else will we use technology for? So thinking about the wow factor of the office. Once upon a time, it was if you had a nice coffee and nice food. Well, that's mainstream even before the pandemic now. So how about, things like, I think we'll see more things like digital artwork and interesting look and feel experiences for people. I think, thinking about our settings such as fitness settings, relaxation settings, all those types of wellness settings, maybe there'll be more technology in those. There'll be more, sophisticated lighting design. There'll be more immersive experiences in those sorts of experiences, but also the sort of fun in the offices. I mean, the traditional games room would have a table tennis table and a console. There are things out there now that we all know that are more interactive. Maybe that's where we'll be putting our money in the design of our offices in the future, so that not only do they work and they're easy and they're intuitive and they're fit for purpose for the business. So when you go to the office, you're maximizing what you're using that office for work-wise, but also it's maxing out on the social interactions and the fun side, because that's the wow factor. I think that's going to become really important on attracting and retaining talent. And think about any experience that you enjoy now, whether it's a day out, whatever it might be, a VIP experience at a concert, that sort of wow factor and sharing that story on social media is quite important to help also build your brand. And I think that is an area that we are going to see develop with a more technology focused approach for all of us. And again, I don't know what the answers are there. At the moment, you just think, yeah, great, if I had a big budget, I could do some great stuff. But really thinking about what creates value and engages with people best. Certainly those areas there, there's more to come on that for us all, I think.
I think there's one thing, I think what we realise in conversations with people is as well that I think it's moved away, it's become a more people-oriented experience too, because everyone's been so isolated working from home that they want to come where people are. So we can have all these fancy environments, but if we don't have the people, then that's sort of the right people are not there. They still wouldn't actually come. So I think it's finding a mechanism to sort of have the right people together, so they want to come to be part of that group. So might be senior managers that sort of the younger generation or the new starters want to sort of meet up and events like that. I think that's probably also a key thing. It's not anymore just about the built environment.
Thanks, Jessica. Alan, what challenges have you seen at the BBC over the last 12 months and going forward? if you could give me, if you can give us, share your views, please.
I think over the last 12 months, we've had the challenge of staying on air and keep broadcasting. We're part of the national infrastructure, and obviously dealing with a global workforce which is at different stages in this whole pandemic reaction. We're now obviously turning our attention to planning for the return to work and what our situation will be when things settle down. I think, as the previous speakers have said, there's a lot of attention got to be paid to the different tribes. There's the tribes of the people who have been at work all this time. There's the people who will continue to have to come into work because that's the nature of their job. You know, if you're broadcasting on air, if you're a doctor or a nurse, you have to come in. You can't do that from home. And then there are the people who will now have quite a lifestyle change. So all of a sudden, your workforce has started to had a big mix change. What I would say is my strong belief is those changes were happening already. They might have been happening slowly. They might have been happening faster in some organizations and not in others, but they were on the move before this happened. All this has done has accelerated something that was probably going to happen maybe over 10 years or 5 years, depending on what it is. And it's speeded up. For me, the attention, which I think is right and proper, is the attention is now on the people and the human experience. From a property industry, we've spent too much time about the foyer, the cladding, the iconic status of the building and what that says about the organization. It's the people who work for you who matter. The technology helps the people, it helps the organization, it helps the shareholders.
It's all about supporting the people the best way you possibly can. I think the big connection that has to be made is between real estate and facilities management. Facilities management need to use the technology much, much better to look after the people, look after the asset. And I think that the experience in the office, or the HQ, or whatever you want to call it, is now a hosted experience. And that's hosted both in terms of the facilities. You say good tea, coffee, food is a given. The experience when you walk through the door has to be that which you choose. You choose your restaurant, your pub, your hotel that you go to because of the experience you have as a human being when you walk in there. It will be the same when you go to work, and you will pick your employer based on that experience. You will stay with your employer based on that experience. And I think this is for some industries, for some professions, this is quite a shift. It should have been on the shift anyway. And I think it's not dissimilar to what's happened in retail. So retail's gone online, that's great, everyone orders online, but then the people who've got that really, really smart balance between something on the high street, an experience with really good online, customer loyalty, all those sort of things. I think that's now what has to happen in the office environment. One thing that is absolutely guaranteed, and I'm not some great guru, but in 12 months' time, it won't be what we're talking about now. In 24 months' time, it'll be completely different again. That is an absolute given. The technology, the way we use the technology, the way people behave is going to move. And we need to develop things that can move and flex quickly. We can't go and buy a load of stuff and bolt it down and go, right, job done, we're all set now for 2022, and because you'll be unbolting it. I think it has to be really, really flexible and nimble. And that's what we're swinging into action now. We're announcing today that we're going to an agile workforce across the UK. And we're starting to change our employment policies and support and our code of behavior for everyone when you're in the building. It takes a lot of active management. And again, this is a big HR exercise. We've talked about technology and real estate. This is a massive HR exercise to make sure people are managed, supported, cared for appropriately. And we haven't mentioned accessibility and diversity across the workforce as well, which everything needs to be touched and felt to make sure we're delivering to every customer, as I call them. Every customer has to have an exceptional experience, because for the last 12 months, we've all been able to tailor our experience to what we find most comfortable. Some of us have been able to do it better than others, depending on your circumstances, but it's a bespoke service you've got at the moment. And now you're going to go back to a less bespoke service.
I mean, that flexibility is really key, isn't it? And I suppose a lot of our clients anyway are turning their attention to the collaboration areas, that experience when you walk through the front door. But trying to plan for the next 12 months, as you say, we can't predict it. And we just got to make sure that we ebb and flow as we hopefully come out of the pandemic. One thing that we do hear a lot of is Zoom fatigue, and people getting, I suppose, the well-being of our people, and people getting very tired. There seems to be a very strong concentration focus on the screen. And Michael, question for you. Has this been a problem for Accenture, this fatigue and that downtime between finishing off from work and then going down the stairs as your downtime into the living room? What are those challenges that you're facing within your business?
I mean, most definitely it is absolutely the case. I think everybody was excited that when we started working from home, we had all this technology that we could use. And now people are saying, and certainly I'm saying it, sitting in this room looking at two screens is not exactly how I envision my career developing even. I mean, we've had 100,000 people that have joined Accenture since the lockdown began and have never been into an office. And that's a real concern. How do we bring those people into the organization? And we've done some behavioral things. For example, we have no meetings Friday. So what we've said is that we've no Zoom meetings scheduled on our Teams, because we really use Teams mostly. So we say we're going to not have those meetings. So maybe one-to-one meetings perhaps, but none of the formal meetings, to try and give people a rest from that. And I think that's had a degree of success. It's not obviously going to be perfect, but I think little things like that can be done. Other ways, I think it's been mentioned earlier that, other ways of collaborating should be used. And we've been using all sorts of online collaboration technology, experimenting with it to try and make that work. But it is definitely a challenge to make people feel part of the organization. And for many young people, all of our graduates coming from university, one huge thing when they joined an organization like Accenture is building up their own personal network and meeting people and building those relationships, which would help them in their career going forward. And there's an absence of that because of the way in which we have to interact right now. So again, we're encouraging the mentoring programs. We're encouraging people to participate on our online knowledge exchanges. We're amping up training dramatically. What we have done, we're bringing all of our people, all 540,000 people, through about 25 hours of training on the services that we offer to our clients, on the technology that we offer to our clients, as part of building our TQ, as we call it, within the organization, which is a huge undertaking in terms of a commitment to training, which I think is vital, but also a commitment to understanding that people are working in very difficult situations. Because I love the point that was made earlier. Our space is only for our people. We don't manufacture anything. We don't have showrooms or anything like that. We don't have retail offering. We have the space for our people to come in. So it's all about that experience. It's all about our people. I think the designs of our space will change in the future. We will go, as we have done already, rolled out a lot of collaboration space. And I, absolutely, understand the point that Claudia was making earlier about delivering space. I mean, we have about 2 million million square feet of space under construction right now. So we are looking at how we finesse those to provide much more collaborative and interactive space. We definitely see we're moving from what we would describe as me space to we space to us space, to everybody together. That's the transition, because we've proven you don't need to come into the office to commune with your laptop or work on an Excel file. That can be done at home. When you come into the office, it's a much different experience, and it's going to be about how you collaborate. So that's the promise, and that's something that we're hoping we'll deliver when we can finally open up.
Is that going to affect the 2 million square feet that you have? Is that going to affect the amount of floor space that you currently have in your portfolio, or have you not got to that point yet?
I mean, ultimately, yes. I think anybody will say that probably we will see a reduction in the portfolio. I think if you'd asked me that question a year ago, I would say, oh, we'll see a dramatic reduction. I don't see that will be the case. I think there will be tweaks. There'll be some offices that perhaps are too small and don't give the enriched experience that we want, and therefore we might reconsider those. As I've said, in our big delivery centers, if more people are working from home, maybe there's a need for less space. But critically, if you're creating a space that is all about collaboration, design thinking areas, rumble rooms, all of that, that takes up more space than an individual desk. So we're not really looking at it with, we're absolutely not in love with real estate savings or anything like that. We are focused on the experience for our people, and that's what we need to concentrate. And yes, there will be some, there may be some space that doesn't work for us anymore, other space that we want more of. I think that's going to categorize what and how we approach it.
Yeah. So I suppose with this groundswell of people, who we've certainly seen anyway, wanting to come back to the office. A question for you, Jeff. Are you seeing how that might affect your real estate strategy, how you're thinking about your spaces? Is there a focus on more collaboration? Claudia mentioned a wow factor. What's in your mind at the moment?
Yeah, I kind of to build on a couple things that folks have said throughout this conversation. I think one, it's interesting. We often go to new hires and we talk about new hires. I think the reality is everybody's coming back to a new experience. The entirety. We've continued to evolve our portfolio through the pandemic. We've delivered probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 million square feet that no people have been in for the most part. So if you think about that, and we have, several million more under construction as we speak, and we're continuing to grow. We don't suppose that we'll get smaller. We think it'll change. We think it'll maybe be more dynamic, to Claudia's point, and we'll do some things in this space that will evolve it. But I do think that our experiences and what we're looking to deliver is really curated across our business, right? We have a lot of different, what we'll call personas, and our, what you would call traditional kind of office worker was already super flexible. Our Salesforce was ultra flexible at this point. So as we continue, then you get into our engineering environment, it's different. We utilized our space to do a lot of things, like run our hackathon globally, those types of things. So we'll continue to evolve those things and how we do those. Now, we delivered our hackathon last year completely virtual, and it was hugely successful, and we had massive participation because it was. So, we're taking those things in, we're adding in new things, we'll change things that we thought we knew, but we didn't. It's a complete kind of evolution that's going to happen over the next, I think, 6, 12, 18, 24, to Alan's point, it's going to continue to evolve, and it'll be interesting to see the things that we thought were going to happen that happened, and the things that we didn't even anticipate. I think that's this is a really exciting time because there's a lot of opportunity for new things to evolve and creative thinking to happen. And that's what I find one of the most interesting things. As we're delivering spaces, we're continually thinking, are we delivering the right thing, and are we delivering it in a manner that's going to be able to be evolved quickly and easily when we do it. So it's about flexibility as well.
Are you getting pressure from your employees to reopen your offices?
I would say that if we were having this conversation 8 months ago, probably I wouldn't call it pressure at that point. I wouldn't call it pressure now. What I would call it is there are a lot of folks that don't have the same experience as other people who are maybe a little more senior in their career. And so a lot of our maybe a little newer in career, their experiences are a little different, and they're longing to be able to and what you see, society opens up, and what does everybody do? Everybody goes to the pub or goes to the bar or comes together at a restaurant or goes to the beach or goes to the park, and then we get a picture of everybody standing on everybody. It's that same kind of thing. People by nature want to come together, they want to socialize, and they want to hang out. Like, that's what I think a lot of people are gonna look to do. And I think office is going to play a big part of that kind of culture as we move forward. It's going to create those connections in a lot more softer ways than maybe we've seen in the past.
It's really interesting though, when you start to analyze your workforce in patterns of behavior, the younger people, yeah, they want to come back because they're living in a bedsit or shared house, whatever. They probably want to come into town and go to the pub on a Thursday and a Friday night because town's a cool place to be. The senior managers who live in the leafy suburbs have got a nice study and great tech, not so keen to come in, or maybe want to come in on a Tuesday, Wednesday. So the senior people are in on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and the cool guys are in on Thursday and Friday. There's so much in play here that will have to be nuanced. It's going to be really, really interesting, and quite an equitable thing coming into play there, that the senior people might going to have to lean in and bend to follow the team. Really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Maybe in our designs we'll see different coloured walls on different coloured days, dependent on who's walking into the office.
Virtual.
Might be a good technology thing.
I think I just wanted to just add one more thing, and I think it's the point on the culture. One thing that we've seen, and that's where we, within property or corporate real estate, we found the whole thing with the pandemic, there is a silver lining to that. And as an example, most recently what we've done is we've communicated out, but our CEO has given up his office. And what we've done as a result is we released all offices. So we are now working on this, currently working on it. But basically, we've communicated to all our senior management that every room is going to be a bookable room. So it's just that bit where, that culture, it's changing. It's what does this mean? And I think the very fact that you see it from the top, it's more, I think, appealing to the rest that, okay, everything is changing. It's more like, yes, how can we make it work, But I think to your point, Alan, that whole bit on that loading, as to who will come in. Again, that bit on whether, the youngsters want to work with the senior people, so experience, and again, for their building up their career, I think that's the bit where we really have to have that connections with HR and, the people leaders to ensure that that approach is well thought of. And I think that's the bit where the next 12 months it'll be challenging, but it's quite amazing to see how that shift happens.
I like those people who say, we have apprenticeships, and the apprentice sat there and learned by sitting next to me. And it's like, did they really learn that much? You probably had them making cups of tea for 2 years.
Exactly.
Something a bit more active, a bit more constructive.
Well, that doesn't happen at TP Bennett. But I was just going to talk about earlier on about health and well-being and about the intensity on the screen. Is there anything that you guys are responding to, you know, to try and mitigate that issue? Any technology that's being used to try and help with the relief of the eyes? Claudia, is there maybe a question for you there?
So that's an interesting one, isn't it? So I'm fed up with being on a screen all day and in meetings all day like the rest of the world is. It's all so boring now and I just want a break. So, and I think that's just generally the sentiment with people. I think, you know, the last few months has just taken its toll. So Mastercard has responded in a couple of ways. We've got a couple of meeting-free days. So once a quarter, we have globally a meeting-free day. We are in EMEA, we're going to summer hours. So on, I think it's the 24th of May that week until beginning of September. We are basically having Friday afternoons off to do something for you. And yes, maybe some of us will be catching up with our emails then, but the point is it's time away from meetings that's just solely for you. So I guess in answer to your question, I think organizations have recognized that it's all a bit tiring for everyone and they are responding. But, you know, we are where we are. We are coming out of the pandemic. So there is no magic wand to make it better for everyone right now. I think just responding, you know, and I'm saying I'm using HR because it sort of all comes under HR, if you like. Responding appropriately, and I feel Mastercard are responding appropriately, is probably where everyone is at the moment. I think looking to the future, you know, none of us know what the future holds, but I think there's all the right intentions. There's a desire to get people back in for a number of different reasons that we've covered already. I think we should spend a moment talking about operations actually and FM, because I think that's quite important. So, you know, once we're at a stage where we really understand the utilization in the portfolio and the patterns of behavior when people and teams are in the office, I don't think we should underestimate the management involved with ensuring that, you know, the business continues to grow without growing the square footage, so making it all efficient and working, but the management involved day to day on ensuring that not every team rocks up on the same day to have a team meeting. Okay, so that's going to be quite tricky because up until now, unless you're in a sales team, no one really planned as a team. You just would turn up, you'd know you'd see your colleagues in, and if you didn't, it was no big deal. You'd catch them the next day, whatever. Really, the sales guys, we should look at them in our organization to see how they operate because they've been out on the road for ages. They're never always in at the same time, yet as teams, they're very cohesive. So they do come together at, you know, whether it's once a week, whatever it is. And I think there's some understanding there that the real estate team have to do with the business that then has to be translated into FM managing that and managing it appropriately. And tech will have a part to play in that. I don't know what that is, but I think that's quite important. I don't know if anyone in any of their organizations now have got that completely organized or if they need to. I mean, up until now, we haven't needed to, but now we will need to. So that's something that we'll be looking at.
If I can comment to that, Claudia, I think that's right on spot here, and it's the same situation for us. So what we're trying to do, we're just starting doing that, is working with team agreements. So actually, we're trying to figure out what are the teams that are usually working together, bring them together and figure out what is their teaming agreement, and actually, what does that mean ultimately for us from an office perspective is obviously, when are we going to the office? How often do we need to the office and how we're going to use the office? We just started piloting that in Sydney. I'm saying it was medium successful because it's just a new challenge. It's something new. Exactly to your point, Claudia, people are not used to that, right? The office was the place you're just going to go and do your work. That was the normal. The exception was staying at home or being somewhere or traveling or whatever. And this is turning around now completely. So I think the mind shift will need to change, and it probably will take some time until we're going to get there. There's just one more thing, if I can elaborate on that one. Mark, earlier you mentioned this Zoom fatigue, and we all said here, totally in agreement. We want to get out of our homes and go back to the office. However, which is interesting, which we surveyed at Salesforce, is that employees were giving us the response in this period of working from home they are way more productive. So that's an interesting element. However, we started pretty early in surveying people and asking them for their opinion, and the curve is flattening now. So to me, it makes total sense because, as we all know, versus hopping from one meeting room to the other, one floor to the other, traveling, we're just pushing the bottom, right? We go from one conference to the other, which actually leads to the fatigue. Nevertheless, to be focused, to be productive, it does make sense to me. I just feel like it doesn't work forever. And maybe we're at a point now where this productivity will go down, where you're just going to be focused on your area. You're just going to talk to your colleagues, but you miss the wider company. You miss the culture and everything else. But that's probably the challenge for the future, to make use of this higher productivity, depending on the way you work, but still retaining the culture and bringing people together and responding just to the natural wish of people being together with each other.
Markus, I don't know, is the echo still there? Hopefully not. I think that's the same for us, Markus. I think we've reached that sort of peak as well. I think that, and the on-off scenario, I think it's going to be more challenging because, as you say, everyone's on the screen and on that in front of their laptop continuously. Whereas people that will return to the office will walk between spaces. So they have these moments of being off from talking to people. So you'll get two different sort of work patterns. People will have these off moments between elements, between events during the day, and others that are sort of constantly on. So I think it's finding protocols of how that's going to work going forward. Claudia, to your point, I think we're similar to Markus. We've already started that as well with Teams. We just literally a couple of months ago rolled that first out in India, of really sort of working in that sort of team structure. And we're doing exercise at the moment in some of our other countries where we are looking at having discussions with the team leaders and the managers of understanding their teams and how they want the teams to work. Some people say, actually, I have a team that always needs to be, some people of the team need to be present every day of those weeks. It doesn't need to be the same people, but they're always like a call center, they have to have someone there. Whereas other teams actually say, well, we only need to come together as a team once a week or once a fortnight, similar as sales teams doing. But I think everyone is sort of, and then we're working through data and technology. We're trying to sort of develop a platform where we can sort of, where that then automates and rolls out what is the best ways of working. So I think that's where technology and data will play a key role to sort of inform us and help us with developing those working patterns with the input from the managers. But it's an interesting time, but I think it will be constantly developed as we continue.
It's interesting.
Very quickly, Mark, because I know we are on time. Claudia, to your question, I think Markus also covered that, and Jess too. But I think what we've done is pretty much similar. We did that survey. I think to your point, Markus, at the start, it was people said they are really productive working from home. Then we went through something called expression of interest to understand after a few months to see what really people think and whether they really take that hybrid approach. Now, most recently, we've released applications. So people have to apply whether they want to work from home or the hybrid or whatever, how many days, for example. But that's what our approach is. And we are phasing it out in different markets. So phase one is pretty much UK, America, a few of them, the big countries. But out of that, what we are doing is we're obviously working with people leaders to ensure that they are in agreement with this is their team wanting to work from home. But we're also using things like desk booking solutions so that we manage the load, saying that 3 days they're going to come, this team that they want to work together. And then the people leaders on that floor need to be connected so they know that they want all their teams in, so that particular day might not work. But we are trying to keep that whole engagement going based on that. But yeah, as of the latest with applications, what we've seen is 65% want to work from home versus the 80% when we seen at the start of the pandemic.
I think just to add to that, actually, Suzan, very quickly, I think one thing that is good for real estate at the moment is that all of our employees are much more honest about how they're feeling than they used to be in the old days. Okay, so if I take myself again, I've got 3 children. I've done homeschooling. I've worked until 1 o'clock in the morning. It's been hard work the last year or so. And today, for example, is an inset day, which means everyone's off school for the day. I nearly had a heart attack when I found out because of this call. Anyway, so it's hard, right? And it's hard for various different reasons, and even people without kids, and etc. But I think what we're getting now is an honesty in responses, and that is really helpful for once in our lives for real estate to really get a true view of how people are feeling. And I think we should leverage that. So for me, technology is super important, but you cannot forget the human connections and that communication with people to complement what our technology strategy should be, because I think that's very, very key to the success of the future.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, really good point, Claudia. Yeah, and I think we're need to wrap up now. Been a very interesting debate. Honesty was an interesting one that came out here. Markus, the point about productivity seems to be plateauing, and almost there seems to be a bit of a cultural erosion there that you're talking about, and maybe that's something that as organizations we have to, as architects, designers, real estate people, that's maybe something that we have to be aware of. But also there's the humane thing over the last 12 months, 40, we just saw Claudia's daughter come and give us all a wave. I actually came into the office today because last time I did a webinar, my son hit me over the head with a dinosaur book. So, which got a few chuckles, and it hurt quite a lot actually. So there's a bit of some fun bits to it, but I'm going to wrap it up because I know everyone's really busy, and it's been fascinating talking to you, and nice to see everyone. And for the audience, thank you for listening, and wish you all a really good day, and have a good weekend.